الحمد لله رب العالمين وأصلي وأسلم على من بعث رحمة للعالمين وعلى آله وأصحابه وأجمعين أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Inshallah, we continue with the tafsir of Surah An-Nisa from ayah number 135. So this ayah begins a slightly different topic. Overall, Surah An-Nisa is to do with many ahkam related to the weak and vulnerable in society. Surah An-Nisa has many, probably one of the surahs with the most rulings in Islamic law in the Qur'an. Obviously Surah Baqarah and Surah Al-Imran, these have many rulings in them as well, but Surah An-Nisa is full of rulings. And those rulings revolve around a lot to do with the rights and responsibilities, establishing justice in regards to the weak and vulnerable in society, especially women, orphans, widows, etc., wives, daughters, to do with inheritance, marriage, divorce, the rights of orphans, etc. This ayah is talking about establishing justice, the whole principle of establishing justice. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls the believers to establish justice, not just in society, not just around them, but within themselves first. This is the call of the ayah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begins this ayah, بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا كونوا قوامين بالقسط شهداء لله ولو على أنفسكم أو الوالدين والأقربين. So the beginning of the ayah is, O believers, stand firm for justice as witnesses for Allah, even if it is against your own selves, your parents, even if it's against your parents or close relatives. O believers, stand for justice as witnesses for Allah, even if it is against yourself, your parents, or close relatives. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues, إِيَّكُنْ غَنِيًّا أَوْ فَقِيرًا فَاللَّهُ أَوْلَى بِهِمَا. Be they rich or poor, Allah is best to ensure their interest. فَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا الْهَوَى أن تعدلوا وإن تلووا أو تعرضوا فإن الله كان بما تعملون خبيرا. So do not let your desires cause you to deviate, meaning deviate from justice. If you distort the testimony or refuse to give it, then know that Allah is certainly all aware of what you do. So this one ayah has so much packed inside it. It has such critical moral guidance with regards to justice and with regards to being fair, objective, and taking out your self-interest from the equation. And we'll see how. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begins this ayah with addressing the believers. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. As we know, we've mentioned many times, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala often uses this in the Qur'an, it's for the believers to take notice. O you who believe, O believers, is to catch your attention. Like Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma said that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opens the ayah with this phrase, then pay attention. There's something of huge benefit to you, or there's something that will be helpful to you, some huge wisdom, benefit, or prevention of some kind of harm. So, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses the believers so that you pay attention, that there's something important Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to inform you of or guide you towards in terms of some law, advice, exhortation, wisdom, etc. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kunu qawwamina bil qist. Be stand firm for justice. Stand firm for justice. The word here used is qawwamina. Qawwamina bil qist. Qawwamina is the plural of qawwam, which is on a very intensive form in the Arabic language. It's an intensive form. It's a hyperbolic pattern, right, of qa'im, of the word qa'im. Qa'im means the one who stands or takes responsibility. Qa'im, the one who stands or takes responsibility. The singular form, qawwam, refers to someone who is deeply committed to maintaining or carrying out something in the most complete and excellent manner. So it's not just to do something, it's not just to execute something, implement something, it's to do it with deep commitment and doing it in the most complete, perfect or excellent way, in a complete way, fully committed. Qawwam. So here the plural is qawwamin. So it means that be constantly steadfast in upholding justice. Be constantly steadfast in upholding justice amongst yourselves in all circumstances and situations. Let nothing distract you or prevent you from doing so. So the word and the pattern that's used here is qawwamin, which is, as I said, it's an intensive form. It doesn't mean be just one day and then don't be just another day. It means to be just constantly throughout your life, in all circumstances. Make it a characteristic of yourself. Qawwamin means this person, one of his characteristics is that he is just. It's a characteristic, is something that belongs to you all the time. It's not something one day you have it, another day you don't. It becomes an attribute of yourself, that you establish justice, or you are just. And shuhada, kunu qawwamina bil qist, so stand firm for justice. Shuhada lillah, witnesses, as witnesses for Allah. So this justice is only for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The reason why you are being just in all circumstances, in all places, is because for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And again, shuhada is the plural of shaheed. And on this form in the Arabic language, this form of fa'il, shaheed, it typically means or refers to qualities that are firmly rooted in the person. So shaheed, someone who bears witness, it's not something that comes and goes, it's not fleeting. It's part of the very being of that person, that he stands up and witnesses, bears witness to the truth, to justice, to somebody's rights. Yeah? Just like Kareem, same pattern. Shaheed, Kareem, Hakeem is the same pattern, fa'il. It means these people are generous or wise. It's deeply rooted within the very person as his being. So in other words, as I mentioned, so being witnesses for Allah, what does it mean? It means establishing testimony truthfully and sincerely for the sake of Allah alone, not for any worldly reason or personal gain. Many times you'll see when people are having conflicts and arguments, disputes or going to court, many people will pay off, bring witnesses, pay them off. Or someone will agree to be a witness to gain some favor for the person who's asking them to be a witness. Or someone will gain some other benefit by being a witness. Or they will be a witness to falsehood. They will go there and bear false testimony. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that establish justice, shuhada lillah, witnesses only for the sake of Allah, truthfully, sincerely for the sake of Allah, not for any worldly reason or personal gain. So true faith requires you to be just in your judgments and to give testimony with integrity and honesty. So as I said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses the believers with this noble call, with this title of believers. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. Yeah, and it's to appeal to you to pay attention, and it should stir the emotion in your heart that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is calling us, addressing us as believers. So with these two words, qawwameen and shuhada, if you combine it, that you are not only establishing justice, but it is a part of you, it's your characteristic, it's constantly with you, and you're only doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in that word, in that meaning, in this combined meaning, is that you are always just in your dealings, whatever it is. It might be something small, it might be something big. You could be the president of a country, or the prime minister, or you could be just a chairman of a small organization, or as leader of your family, or when judging between two people. Whatever situation it is, you have to have this quality of justice. You have to establish justice. That quality must be a part of you, and you must be doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's as though Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, train yourselves, remind yourselves, be conscious of yourselves to always speak the truth. What happens when you're called to testify? When it's a tricky situation, the first thing people avoid is speaking the truth, because either the truth will get them in trouble, or the truth means they will lose something, or the truth means their party will lose something, or their family member will lose something, or their friends will lose something. So when you speak the truth, there's consequences. Often there's some kind of loss involved, maybe, perhaps. Or you lose the friendship of someone. You lose the closeness of your relative because you spoke the truth. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, always speak the truth. Support the oppressed, because justice is established when there's injustice, and often, more than often, it's against the weak, the vulnerable, the less powerful. The victims of injustice usually, not always, usually, often, is against the weak, the less resourced, etc. So even if they're rich, they're still oppressed. If someone oppresses them, whether they're rich or poor, and we'll come to that, they are still the oppressed. So our support, our speaking the truth, our efforts and standing for the truth must be always in the cause of the one who's oppressed, not the oppressor. And we must always stand against injustice. So let these values become a natural part of your character. People should refer to Muslims, as the Prophet ﷺ said, the believer, the Muslim, is the believer is the one from whose hand and tongue other people are safe from. Other people are safe from. So the other people, they should see you as a believer and know that you will not do any injustice to them. You will speak the truth. You will be on the side of the oppressed. You will be on the side of the one who's wronged. It's not enough to be fair or just once or twice. Rather, you must constantly uphold justice with every person and in every situation. And we know across the world, internationally, there is so much injustice going on. There's so much oppression going on, in very, very clear, in front of us. Internationally, there's injustice going on. We are angry, there's rage, and rightfully so. Rightfully so. But also ask ourselves, how much justice do we implement in my own life? How just am I? How much justice do I establish in the areas that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me control over? Whether it's within my friendship circle, my relatives, my family, my children, my parents. Whatever small situation you have authority or control over or leadership, how just am I in my dealings? with other people in the community or people you don't know? How just am I? This is a question we must ask. But this justice, the whole reason why there's discrimination, there's unfairness, there's injustice, there's oppression in the world, is because of this lack of people establishing justice on themselves, being just themselves, and speaking out, being witnesses in the cause of supporting those who are oppressed. This is the reason, this is the solution. If everyone followed this ayah, one ayah, it gets rid of so many problems in the world. So many problems. Not just in the world, just even on local mosque committees, even in local Muslim organizations, in families, amongst relatives. This one ayah, if we could follow, it would solve so many problems. Just one ayah. Then one of the mufassir, one of the people who explain the Qur'an, he says that the phrase "Kunu qawwamina bil qist," this is the most emphatic wording possible to command and emphasize justice. Qawwamina bil qist. You can't get more of a stronger emphasis to be just, because there's many ways in Arabic to say be just. You could say i'dilu. That means be just. There's many ways like that. You could use different words. Or you could say kunu adilin. Kunu adilin. Or muqsitin. These are different ways of saying be just. But the phrase, the style that's used here by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is the most emphatic, most powerful, most emphasized, strong possible term of saying be just. Kunu qawwamina bil qist. Be just in your very characteristic, in your character, at all times, all places, and do it in a complete, committed manner. Also, the Mufassirun, they say justice is not only about in legal matters. People think it's only when it goes to court, the judge has to be just. It's not only in legal rulings, as you all know, but it's also, more importantly, which we come across every day, is in personal behavior, such as fairness between spouses, fairness amongst children, fairness amongst relatives, amongst parents, when you're interacting with them, dealing with them. And we also mentioned the shuhada alillah, so it all has to be for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then Imam Fakhruddin al-Razi, he explains why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put establishing justice before giving testimony. The phrase says, Kunu qawwamina bil qist. Establish justice, shuhada lillah. Testifying for the sake of Allah. So first came establish justice, then came bear testimony or being for the sake of Allah. Why did Allah put the justice first and witnessing second? He says, because most people tend to command others to do good, but they fail to apply it themselves. Most people will command the others. Most people, when they witness an injustice, it's very easy to say, he's wrong, she's wrong, she's unjust, he's unjust. It's very easy to make a judgment when other people are disputing or having a difference amongst themselves, or one is oppressing the other. It's very easy. It's very easy to bear witness, to say, yes, I saw this person be unjust to this person. It's easier than to establish justice for yourself, to be just yourself. So that's why he says that this is a kind of hypocritical state that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to correct. So Allah starts by commanding the believers to establish justice amongst themselves first. قَوَّامِينَ بِالْقِسْطِ, establish this characteristic of being just, of justice in yourself first. And it also teaches that any commands that comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we need to be strict on ourselves first before we command others to do it, before we tell others to do it. Whatever we say to others to do, we must be more strict in doing it ourselves. Why? Why is that? Because the command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will protect you. If you implement it, it will protect you from harm, from punishment. Why would you want to save someone else from punishment and harm, but you don't save yourself? So it's more important to save yourself from punishment and harm than to save somebody else. If you don't save yourself from punishment and harm, then what's the point of saving somebody else? You fail in your own self. Your self-interest comes first. So therefore, justice is mentioned first. Secondly, he says, establishing justice is an action, often, while testifying, giving testimony, is speech. An action often is greater and comes before speech in terms of its weight, in terms of its consequences, in terms of establishing justice. So action is stronger, more meaningful when it comes to justice than mere words. So it's mentioned first. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues that not just establish justice, not just make justice a characteristic of yourself, not just to do it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but وَلَوْ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَوِ الْوَالِدَيْنِ وَالْأَقْرَبِينَ. Even if it is against, meaning establish justice for the sake of Allah, be witnesses for the sake of Allah, even if it is against yourself. So three things are mentioned here. Even if it is against yourself, or it's against your parents, or it's against your relatives. And in this order, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is putting what comes naturally to you first is to protect yourself from any loss and harm. Usually, you would try to avoid, by not establishing justice, if, for example, speaking the truth or establishing justice, you're going to lose out personally, or you will be punished, or some harm will come to you. You will quickly say, look, I can't speak here, or I can't do this, I can't do that. Why? Because it's going to affect me personally. That's number one. The next kind of closest people to you are your parents. Most people would not establish the truth or establish justice if they know it's going to go against their parents. Most people, very difficult, especially in our cultures, there's no way someone's going to stand up and speak the truth if they know it's going to go against their parents. You know, culturally, that's unthinkable. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, no, if it goes against yourself, if it goes against your parents, you must still speak the truth, establish justice. If your parents have done wrong to somebody, you must be able to say it in the right way, with manners, with adab, not rudeness, not, but you must be able to stand up for justice, even if it's against your parents. And then your close relatives. Again, after parents, your closest relatives. Again, people don't want to speak up for the truth. Someone from outside comes with a complaint, with a accusation, and this person is your first cousin, or is your uncle, or is your aunt. Often people will just side with their cousins. They'll just speak on behalf of their cousin, defend them no matter what they did. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, do this, be just people. More so if it goes against yourself, your parents, your relatives. In other words, if it goes against any of your self-interest. It's not easy to do. And it's not, you're going to just do this overnight. This is striving for the deen, is striving to implement the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a lifetime effort. It's a lifetime effort. You must get better every day, every week, every year. It's something you have to work on. It's not going to happen overnight. Then they say, if you can do it there, if you can establish justice there, then it's easier. You will be easily able to establish justice with people you don't know. If they're not related to you, they're not your parents, it doesn't involve you yourself. Then in society, when there's two people or two parties that come, you don't know them, you'll be able to easily establish justice because there's no self-interest often. If you can do it against yourself, your parents, your relatives, then you can establish justice in the community, in the wider society. It'll be easier because they're not connected to you. And they said that in the early community, amongst the time of the Prophet ﷺ, the Sahaba, the early predecessors, they used to accept testimony from parents or children or siblings because their integrity was not in doubt. The Sahaba, as you know in the science of hadith, I've mentioned this before as well, how do you know a hadith is true or not? How do you know it's sahih, is sound, or is da'if, is weak, or is fabricated? Mawdu'. How do you know this? The scholars, they have a very complicated, complex science to check the narrators, the narration, the reports. And one of the things they have to do is check the narrators, mainly two things. One is the narrator trustworthy? Is the narrator who's saying, if someone says, I heard the Prophet ﷺ say this, or they say, I heard Abdullah ibn Umar say that the Prophet ﷺ said this. These are the narrators. So what they do is check who are the narrators and are they trustworthy, adl, or dul. And they check their memory. Is their memory good? Do they make a lot of mistakes in their reports, etc.? Meaning the two main areas. Other things they check, there's lots of details. But the first part, which is, are they trustworthy? When it comes to the Sahaba, you don't have to check. As long as you know this person was a companion of the Prophet ﷺ, and he lived and died on that faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet ﷺ. He died as a Muslim and he was a Sahaba. He was a Sahabi. Then you don't have to check his trustworthiness. It's automatically, he's got the stamp of approval. He's adl, automatically. This is only for the Sahaba generation, not for anyone after them. So this was the integrity they had. But later they said the integrity became doubtful. So the judges in courts, they wouldn't accept the testimony of a brother for another brother, things like that, or parents, because it was suspicious. Someone's going to be biased towards their parent, towards their brother or sister, etc. So then the courts became much more stricter. So this is an important lesson for us to learn, that the Sahaba, subhanAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose that generation for a reason. They could be trusted with the truth, and there's no greater truth than the Qur'an. There's no greater truth than the Sunnah. There's no greater truth than the Sharia and this deen, Islam. That is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose that generation to carry the message after the Prophet ﷺ and to teach the message and to spread the message. They had that quality of being trustworthy, just, upright, speaking the truth. Because you need that to convey any message. If someone's not trustworthy, they don't speak the truth, how can you trust the message? So this is an important lesson. And in our situation now, after so many centuries, we know one of the crises amongst us as Muslims is finding trustworthy people. in business, in interactions, in dealings. People lie, people cheat, people don't return the trust. There's so many cases, so many cases. This is common now. We've lost the quality of being trustworthy. How can we carry this message? How can we show the world this message if we're not trustworthy ourselves? If we can't speak the truth ourselves? If we can't uphold justice in the small responsibilities that we have? How can we be examples or models, role models for others to follow? Or how can we convey this message? Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says more details about being objective and establishing that justice. إِن يَكُنْ غَنِيًّا أَوْ فَقِيرًا فَاللَّهُ أَوْلَى بِهِمَا. If he is rich or poor, Allah is more worthy of both. Meaning, the person you are judging against or for. So if there's two parties or two people who come to you and they want you to judge between them about a dispute or a disagreement or something that's happened, one of them is poor, one of them is rich. So Allah is saying it doesn't matter if one is rich and the other one is poor, or the person seeking a judgment from you is either rich or poor. That should have no bearing on your judgment, on your establishing justice. Whether they're poor or rich, this should not sway you. This should not sway you. So whether it goes against a rich person or goes against a poor person, justice is justice, truth is truth. It's equal for everybody, not the wealthy, not the poor. And we know today in many societies, including in our societies, justice is not accessible for everybody. The rich can hire the best lawyers. They can afford that. They can afford that. The poor can't. So even systematically, justice is not available to everybody. But besides that, when you're in a position to judge between people, that should never sway you. Somebody's poor, somebody's rich. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions it because some people, some of the mufassirin, they said it's revealed regarding a certain situation that the Prophet ﷺ was in where somebody came for regarding a dispute. One of them was rich, one of them was poor, and the Prophet ﷺ's immediate thought or feeling was that the poor one wouldn't do an injustice against the rich one. It would be the other way around. He didn't judge on that, but that's what he felt. And that's a natural inclination. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made human beings like that. If we see somebody poor, weak, someone's rich, wealthy, powerful, naturally we think the wrongdoer must be the one who's wealthy and powerful. How is the poor one with nothing? He's going to be the one who's wrong. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed this ayah. Some scholars say it's regarding this incident. Although the person, he didn't judge unfairly or anything, it's an inclination he had that just occurred in his mind. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's the one who created that for the lesson, for the ummah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that Allah is more worthy of your concern. Like, you should be concerned not about the wealthy or the poor. You should be concerned about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Are you doing right by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not the wealthy, not the poor? Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا الْهَوَىٰ أَن تَعْدِلُوا. Here, do not follow desires lest you deviate from justice. So more details. See how step by step Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first of all says, O you who believe, establish justice, make it a part of your characteristic. Then He says, do it for the sake of Allah. Be testifying for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then He talks about things that will prevent you from establishing justice. What will prevent you? Your self-interest. What will prevent you? Siding on favoring your parents. What else will prevent you? Favoring your relatives. So your family connections and self-interest will prevent you from establishing justice. then what else will prevent you if they're not related to you? Maybe the status of somebody, who's rich, who's poor, who's powerful, who's weak. That may prevent you from establishing justice. Then all of this is related to hawa, desires. And there may be other things which fall all captured under al-hawa, desires. فَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا الْهَوَى أَن تَعْدِلُوا. Do not follow your desires lest you deviate from justice. If you follow your hawa wants to say, I can't go against my family, I can't go against my relatives, I can't go against my parents, I can't go against myself, this will harm me. Or I can't go against this wealthy person, he's going to take revenge. Or I can't go against this poor person for another reason. All of this boils down to your own desires and your fears. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, do not follow your desires lest you deviate from justice. Meaning desire, hawa here is following passions, being influenced by ego, letting emotion override reason. Often when it's family connection, friends, it's emotional. That overrides the intellect, overrides objectivity. As Ibn Kathir says, even if you dislike someone, and this is the very common one, somebody doesn't like somebody, somebody hates that person, or that person wronged them in some other situation, and now they've come in front of them and the person has to judge. Often if you dislike someone or they did something wrong to you previously, often you will not establish justice. So Ibn Kathir says, do not let your personal feelings, bias or anger towards others prevent you from acting justly. Even if you dislike someone, you still have to be fair with them. You still have to be fair with them. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in another ayah, in Surah Al-Ma'idah, وَلَا يَجْرِمَنَّكُمْ شَنَآنُ قَوْمٍ عَلَىٰ أَلَّا تَعْدِلُوا اعْدِلُوا هُوَ أَقْرَبُ لِلتَّقْوَى. Let not the hatred of a people cause you to swerve from justice. Be just, that is closer to piety. And here, hatred of a people, who is he talking about? This could be your enemies. You're not going to hate other believers, but these days obviously Muslims hate on each other. But here in those days or in that time, it was most likely talking about those who are fighting the Muslims. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that do not let the hatred of a people cause you to swerve from justice. Even if they're your enemy, even if you dislike them, you have to always be just. You have to establish justice. And that is closer to piety. If you can establish justice with the person you do not like, or you hate for some other reason, and you can establish justice there, that is taqwa. That is having fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's a practical example from the time of the Prophet ﷺ. Abdullah ibn Rawaha was sent by the Prophet ﷺ to a people. He was sent to a certain people of non-Muslims. And these people had harmed the believers. They had harmed the Muslims in Medina. So when he went, he was sent to collect some kind of tax or something like that, of that nature, maybe some kind of land tax or something, or value something. I don't have the details here. And the people, they tried to bribe him so that he values it less. They said, we'll give you something, and then you value it less, go back and report this is the value of the land or value of the goods. Then the Sahabi, he said, by Allah, I came from the one who is dearest to me, meaning the Prophet ﷺ sent me. He's the dearest to me. He's the most dearest person to me. And he said, you are the opposite. You're people who are not dear to me. In fact, you're the most disliked people to me. But this is the line he said, but my love for him and my dislike for you will not prevent me from being just. I'm not going to do injustice because of the love of the Prophet ﷺ, and I'm not going to do injustice because I dislike you. So this is how the believer's attitude is. Even for the sake of the Prophet ﷺ, you cannot do injustice. You can't say the love of the Prophet ﷺ and it will be advantage to the believers or something, let's do injustice. No, you can't. So he said, my love for him, the Messenger ﷺ, or my hatred for you or dislike for you is not going to prevent me from being just. This is very important to understand. Sometimes we just think it's okay to be unjust for the sake of gaining something for my people, or the deen, or the religion, or the Prophet ﷺ. No, you can't. Justice is for everyone, regardless of where you're coming from. And they replied to him when they heard that, they said, by this the heavens and the earth remain established. By this the heavens and the earth remain established. What do they mean? Because the whole universe, the whole creation is existing by the power and might of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And He established a balance in the creation. That's why He says in the Qur'an, do not upset the balance. He's created a balance. Everything in creation, the whole system is just, is based on justice. We may not see the justice, we may not know why certain things happen, but everything is created with the perfect knowledge, wisdom, mercy and justice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And on the Day of Judgment, what is the scales weighing the deeds? Is of perfect justice. So the heavens and the earth, the dunya and the akhirah is established on justice. So they said, by this, what the Sahabi said, that principle he had, they said, by this the heavens and the earth remain established. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِن تَلْوُوا أَوْ تُعْرِضُوا فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ خَبِيرًا. He ends the ayah or concludes the ayah by saying, and if you distort or withhold testimony, then indeed Allah is fully aware of what you do. So this is like a concluding warning to the believers and a strong caution against abandoning justice or refusing to give truthful testimony. So do not abandon justice and do not go and give false testimony. If you're asked to give testimony, speak truthfully. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says here that فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ خَبِيرًا. He is fully aware, He is fully aware of what you do. Nothing goes, you can't get away with it on the Day of Judgment. If you go and give false testimony, if you don't speak the truth, if you don't stand up for justice, for what is right, you will not get away with it. On the Day of Judgment, Allah will call you to account for it. And there's different readings of this, we won't go into that. Both more or less ultimately come back to the same thing. So in summary, this ayah calls us to establish justice first of all amongst my own behavior, my characteristics. I should be somebody who is just at all times, in all places, regardless of who it is I'm judging by. And as I said, this is not easy. It's easier said than done. It's easy. It's just like the command to not lie. Always speak the truth. It's not easy. But if you practice, if you be aware, if you remind yourself with the Qur'an, if you think of the akhirah, if you think of who you're doing injustice against, if you think of Day of Judgment, if you do your salah, if you do your adhkar, if you stay with people of piety, these things will help and develop you. And slowly you can be strong enough to make sure you do establish justice whenever the situation arises. And we shouldn't let anything else sway us to be unjust, whether it's family, relatives, etc. Or whether the person's rich, powerful or poor and weak. And lastly, this should also call us to action. When we see injustice, whether it's in Palestine, whether it's in Kashmir, whether it's in Iraq, whether it's locally here, or whether it's in another city, we should be thinking, what am I doing to speak against or do something against this injustice? Everyone has the power and capability to do something within your own means and capacity, whether that's making dua, whether they're standing up at night in prayer making dua for them, whether it's giving charity to support the vulnerable, the oppressed, the weak, the orphans, whether it's speaking to your MP, whether it's lobbying, whether it's campaigning, whether it's joining a movement to bring about change. All of these things are possible. We cannot be people who simply think, as long as I pray, as long as I fast, do Hajj, I'm fine. That's how happening over there. I have no power over there. No, everyone has some power and capacity to contribute to speaking up against oppression, to establishing justice. Every small thing counts, every contribution counts. But as the ayah says, first of all, we must start with ourselves, in the domain and area and space that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, and He will hold us accountable in our own areas. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq to understand the Qur'an, to abide by His commands and wisdom and guidance, and to be people of justice once again, inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan. We'll stop here. If there's any questions.